Welcome to this presentation on the integumentary system. In part one, we'll introduce some concepts of the integumentary system as well as taking a look at some of the important functions. So the integumentary system you can also call the integument. Of the 11 body systems, this is actually the largest body system of the body. Just a little trivial pursuit stuff here. You can see it makes up about 16% of our body weight, and it covers anywhere between 1.5 to 2 meters square of surface area. If you're more familiar with square feet, it's covering on average about 20 square feet of surface area. We're going to divide the integumentary system into two major portions. The first one is going to be the cutaneous membrane. If you just want to highlight right here the word cutaneous, I put in parentheses the cutaneous membrane is known also as the skin. So if I were to say to you there is a cutaneous nerve, right, you know that nerve is going to be found in the skin. Or there's a cutaneous blood vessel, that blood vessel is going to be found in the skin. The second portion of the integumentary system include the accessory structures. You don't have to write it down here. I have it for you in subsequent slides. But the accessory structures include our hair, our glands that are in the skin, and then our fingernails and toenails. All right, we'll talk about them a little bit more later. Now, let's take a look at the cutaneous membrane as an overview real quick. We're going to divide the cutaneous membrane into two parts. The outer, more superficial part is known as the epidermis. Right? If you want to just highlight this word right here, the epidermis. This is made up of a bunch of cells known as epithelium. And then below the epidermis is the dermis, and that is made up of a tissue called connective tissue. In this presentation, I'll be using images from two textbooks. The reason for that is this presentation is actually for two different schools. So we'll be using images from the Martini textbook as well as from Tortora, right? So you'll be able to see images from both textbooks. So this happens to be a section of the integument from Martini. If you take a look here, if you kind of just follow where my cursor is, this blue squiggly line right here that goes down and down, right, like this, and up again. Everything above that blue squiggly line, all this in here, is the epidermis. Right? And it's made up of cells here, and that would be the epithelium. Everything below, let's go over here, below the blue squiggly line where my cursor is, all of this pink in here, everything here is going to be the dermis. Right? And this is made up of connective tissue. All right, so this is from Martini. This is what the same picture looks like from the Tortora textbook. From Tortora, it's more of a brown squiggly line, but this is kind of this brown squiggly line that goes up and down and up and down again here. Everything above this is going to be the epidermis, made of epithelium. Everything below right here, all of this is that dermis, and this is made up of connective tissue. The accessory structures that live in the or that are part of the integumentary system are going to be our hair, the hair follicle that makes the hair, our exocrine glands. If you just want to jot down over here, that would be the sweat glands and our oil glands, and then our fingernails and toenails. What's interesting about these accessory structures is that they originate in the dermis, right? So that's where they're made, but then they penetrate up through the epidermis and then go out onto the surface of the skin. And if we go to the Martini book for a moment, this squiggly structure right down over here, this happens to be a sweat gland. All right, so we make the sweat there, then the sweat goes up this tube and goes through the epidermis, right? We've crossed that blue squiggly line, and now the sweat goes out onto the surface of the skin. All right, so it's penetrating through the epidermis. This over here is the hair. Right? This is the follicle where the hair is made, right? So it lives in the dermis, but then the hair, you can see the hair right here, penetrates through the epidermis and then out to the surface of the skin. Same thing in the Tortora book. Right? Here's the hair follicle here, and then you can see the actual hair penetrating up through the epidermis. Right? Here's the sweat gland right here. That's the coil tube, and then the sweat goes up through the epidermis. Right, so all of these accessory structures originate, right? They live in the dermis, but then extend up into the epidermis. Our integumentary system has very important connections to other systems in the body. The two important systems that the integument is connected to are the cardiovascular system. We're going to see that we have numerous blood vessels that are in the dermis. If you take a look over here in the dermis, you can see these big blue veins here and this red big blood vessel here. That's the arteries. They're in the lower part of the dermis here. Right? Then they actually project up, and we can see them again here, these blue and red lines right here. These are smaller arteries and veins, and then they become smaller capillaries right up here. So they're bringing blood into the into the skin. Here's from Tortora again. All these red and blue blood vessels are in the dermis. We'll see that these blood vessels are important for regulating body temperature, right? If you work out and you get hot, your skin turns red, right? That actually brings more blood into the skin so that we lose heat from our body. We need to bring nutrients into the skin, right? So the way the nutrients get into the skin is going to be through the blood vessels. The other system that is important as far as being connected to the integument is the nervous system. We have receptors in our integument for pain, touch. I didn't put it here, but pressure, vibration, hot, cold, right? I put their temperature. All throughout the integument, we have these receptors that are going to send information to the nervous system to interpret the changes that are taking place all about our skin. So you can see here in the Martini book, this black line right here happens to be a nerve, and if we follow the nerve, there's a receptor right over here. This receptor would actually respond to pressure. Right? We don't want to get into their names right now. We'll save that for a later lesson. Here's another nerve right here going up, and at the end of it is another receptor for like a lighter touch, lighter pressure. Here's a nerve here that has what we call free nerve endings. There's just all these little nerve fibers that pick up pain and temperature changes. Right, same thing in the Tortora book. The nerves in this book are yellowish. You can see here, this is all the nerve, they're more yellow. But here's a free nerve ending over here. And here's a receptor for light touch. So the two systems I'd like you to know that have important connections to the integument are the cardiovascular system and the nervous system. And we'll look at how they function with the integument as we go into subsequent lessons. So let's take a look at the functions of the integumentary system. The first function is an important one. It's a protective function. Right? Our integument is protecting everything inside of our body. It's protecting it from trauma. It's protecting it from fluid loss. Right? We have all these different water compartments within our body. If we lost our integument, we would actually dehydrate. And this is one of the problems that we have with severe burns. People that have third-degree burns and they lose a big part of their skin, they could actually succumb to fluid loss, right, from dehydration. And it also protects us from chemicals. The integumentary system is another way that we can get rid of some waste products, salts, organic waste. We can get rid of water. The integumentary system we're going to see helps to control body temperature, right? So if you were to go work out after watching this video, you would actually maybe go on the treadmill and you would start to get hot and you would notice that you would start to sweat. And sweating is a way that we cool down, right? So the integumentary system will have sweat glands turning on to cool us down. Or if we deposit adipose, which is fat, underneath our skin or in the lower part of the dermis, it can act as a form of insulation to keep us warm. The integument produces an important chemical called melanin. And we'll talk about this, but this pigment actually helps to give us color, and one of its major functions is to provide protection from radiation that's found in sunlight. The integument also produces an important protein called keratin. Right, this protein actually makes us water resistant. Right, so it helps to repel water, and it also is protective. It protects us from abrasions. Right, this is one of the reasons when you take a shower, right, you have to dry off. The water doesn't get absorbed directly into your body. The water will bead up on your skin, and you have to use a towel to get rid of the water. The keratin is making us water resistant. Couple other important functions. Our integument makes a very important vitamin called vitamin D3. And we'll see that this is actually activated when we're in the sunlight. And we'll see that this vitamin D3 is actually going to be turned into a hormone in the kidney. If you just want to highlight right here, called calcitriol. All right? This is a hormone that's produced from the kidney, and it actually helps to increase our blood calcium levels. But that hormone is made from vitamin D3. Right? So just by being out in the sunlight, our blood calcium levels go up. Another function is that our integument helps to store lipids. Lipid is just a word for fat. So in the lower part of the dermis and just below the dermis, we have fat cells. They're called adipocytes. Right? Adipose means fat. Site means cell. Right, so this is how we can store energy for future use. The next function we mentioned already, detection. Right? Our integument has receptors that just pick up different types of touch, pressure, pain, vibration, temperature, and all this information is relayed to the nervous system for interpretation. Finally, the integumentary system can also initiate immune responses to disease-causing organisms known as pathogens. And I put that word over here if you just want to jot down. A pathogen is a disease-causing organism. Right? So if something gets into the integument, the immune system is going to be activated. Or if we start to develop skin cancer, the immune system is going to be activated. So the major functions that I'd like you to know for the integument or the integumentary system are protection, excretion, maintaining body temperature, producing an important pigment called melanin, producing an important protein called keratin, producing an important vitamin called D3, storing fats, right, which we're going to call lipids, sensing different sensations that are taking place about us and relaying them to the nervous system for interpretation, and then finally initiating an immune response to disease-causing organisms or cancerous changes that are taking place in the integument. This slide is actually from the Martini book. I like this slide because it's a good overview of what we just discussed. You can see at the top it gives all the different functions of the integumentary system. So this is what we just went over, all the different functions, and then it gives you a good visual of how the integumentary system is divided down. You can see here in blue, this blue box, we have the cutaneous membrane, and then the cutaneous membrane is divided into the epidermis, which we said was made up of epithelial cells, and then the other part is the dermis, which is primarily connective tissue. Now we'll see in part 3 of this presentation that the dermis actually is further divided into the papillary layer and the reticular layer. But all of this here is made up of connective tissue, and again, the epidermis made up of epithelial cells. In the blue box is the accessory structures. So the accessory structures we're going to look at include the hair follicles, right, in the hair. We'll take a look at the exocrine glands, which we said are going to be our sweat glands and oil glands. And then we'll take a look at the nails, the fingernails, and our toenails.